Hello folks, welcome back. In this presentation, I'm going to be going over chapter 15 for my book. That's going to cover fungus and parasites, holistic health, my MRI scan, frequency attacks, chemtrails and barium, dream experiences, reclaiming multidimensional aspects of self, the dreaming mind, astral body anatomy, manifestation transduction sequence, and the shadow body anatomy and net. Okay, so kick things off. I think it was around March to April time where I had the appointment booked for the MRI scan as a result of this pernicious fungal infection that arose from the attacks where I encountered my next little speed bump, if you recollect, in August, September of 2020. That's when I had this like weird entity using a bat lured me to the window, then shone this light device on my being, which triggered something in my solar plexus and led to visceral convulsions. And then what outpictured after that was a series of just pernicious attacks, frequency attacks, black magic attacks, a lot of weird paranormal events, which obviously as a result of all the stress I was put under from those attacks and what that light device did to my subtle body anatomy at the solar plexus level, it created gut dysbiosis, which meant that I had this kind of invasive fungal infection that spread up my vagus nerve into my heart, where I had T-wave inversion ECG. Heart was basically palpitating every 30 seconds for 2 weeks. And so I went to see the doc. They referred me to a specialist. I then fasted for 3 days, learned about fungus and parasites, but otherwise still followed up to get the MRI done just to make sure there wasn't any deeper structural issues with my heart that the cardiogram could not pick up on. Okay. So I already had my cardiogram done and a 3-day ECG monitor that otherwise confirmed everything seemed okay with my heart. If we recall, I fasted for 3 days, which got rid of my heart palpitations, but I still had this organism that spread throughout my body, which needed managing after my attacks. I took an online course by Paul Chek at the Chek Institute on holistic health, really good by the way, as well as a specialist course on parasites and fungus infections that he offers too, which was very enlightening. Very enlightening. I applied the knowledge to my situation to help mitigate any flare-ups from the infection and keep it mostly under control. Fungus is a very intelligent and hard organism to get rid of if it ends up systemic within your body. This is because they share very similar cells to our human cells, which make it very difficult to target fungus without harming our good cells. And they also have the ability to adapt to antifungal medicines. And that's that kind of pleomorphism, that parasites harbor the ability to change their DNA structure within like 3 to 5 days, given external stresses and contaminants that are trying to get rid of it, that it can actually, within 3 to 5 days completely restructure its cells in order to resist medicine or antibacterial and stuff like this. Same with antifungals. Moreover, that's why they're very tricky to get rid of. Moreover, they can trick the immune system into thinking that they are a part of the same healthy DNA structure of the body, evading immune response, a quality also found with parasites. As David Wilcock writes in his source field investigations book, open quote, a parasite known as Trypanosoma brucei, which creates African sleeping sickness, is able to spontaneously rearrange its own DNA so it cannot be defeated by the body's immune system. Amazingly, the parasite is able to dice up and rearrange both strands of its DNA, changing its outer coat so it can continue to avoid being detected, close quote. So they are able to alter their morphology, biological functions, or reproductive modes in response to environmental conditions, meaning they can adapt very quickly to anything that tries to kill it, becoming more resistant and resilient as a result. As with my experience, they can also manipulate your apostat center of the brain that controls your appetite, where I found myself unconsciously craving more sugars, which the fungus and parasites love. The problem with fungal infections lie within their metabolic waste, which are called mycotoxins. To give you an idea as to how toxic these mycotoxins are, they are often extracted from fungi cultures to produce chemicals used for biochemical warfare, highly toxic. As you have probably heard of stories like I have of people eating the wrong mushrooms as found in nature and dying from the poisoning as a result of the toxins associated with the fungi kingdom, it can have devastating effects. But on the flip side, the right ones can be very healing and beneficial. There are also comments I've read which confirm with my personal experience and intuition that fungus, parasites and mold are specifically used and weaponized against awakening indigos, starseeds and anyone seeking the path of truth in order to help stymie their growth, siphon their energy and manipulate their consciousness and fields to inevitably derail them, or at the very least make their lives a misery. I also feel that these organisms react and can be stimulated by frequencies and also can be part of black magic manifestations. So especially given the fact that, nematodes, a common parasite known also as roundworm or threadworm, share their birth/reproduction cycles with the new and full moon cycles respectively. Another reason why the term lunacy and lunatic is associated with the full moon, as the height of metabolic activity associated with reproduction leaches vast amounts of toxins into the host's blood from these nematodes, right? That can end up in the brain and affect all kinds of cognitive and emotional functions. Pay attention to full moon cycles and listen out for sirens compared to other times, and also pay attention to your appetite. You may notice a change that will be inherent with these critters tapping into your apostat center. Moreover, parasites and fungi's day-night cycle is inverted to our own, meaning their day is our night and our night their day. Hence it can explain another phenomenon linked to the need of a midnight snack. I think even people have done research to show statistically that there's more crime committed around a full moon worldwide, right? Which kind of, again, this may be one of the major causes of this increase in criminal activity due to this connection to being a lunatic, okay, with the full moon invoking the increased reproduction of these nematodes that leaches more poison into the bloodstream that can obviously have detrimental effects to the cognitive functions of the brain. So a good way to prove the covert use of these organisms as weapons is by the omittance of these organisms in conventional medicinal curriculums and research, where only 4 antifungals have been released compared to the hundreds of antibiotics over the same time frame. No wonder why my doctor looked flabbergasted when I explained to her my reasoning of the potential cause of my T-wave inversion ECG reading and heart palpitations every 30 seconds being possibly due to a fungal infection. She just gave me that fluoride stare and denied any such possibility and referred me to a specialist. Okay, so I did follow up, but otherwise took matters of health into my own hands to get educated, and just put in brackets here, there's that responsibility and accountability we've all been looking for. So it's kind of like a blessing in disguise, right? This health crisis then triggered me to, seek more knowledge and wisdom in order to apply to make myself healthy and get to build a better relationship with my body to overcome these stresses and deal with these stresses going forward. So the course I did on holistic health with Paul Check online was very educational and otherwise provided 3 very good resources that helped me change my diet and lifestyle to assist my body and consciousness during these times and to become more resilient and able to handle more stress with all these attacks. The first was the research done by Weston A. Price and Price Pottinger, which revealed the stunning reality of how nutrition and physical degeneration go hand in hand, where it can lead to the manifestation of disease and birth deformities within one generation. And in Price Pottinger's research with cats, can lead to the extinction of the cats after the 4th generation, as they became so malnourished they haven't the capacity to reproduce. So I was introduced to Metabolic Typing by William L. Walcott and Biochemical Individuality by Roger J. Williams, okay, where they both advocate that we are all anatomically and metabolically and biochemically different and that no one person is the same. Based on your genetic predisposition and your biochemical individuality, your body will be fine-tuned to efficiently operate on certain ratios of macronutrients, i.e. carbs, proteins or fats, which will help in unlocking your genetic potential. Where your ancestors lived determine what types of foods they ate. Their bodies adapted to these foods over thousands of years, which your body is hardwired to consume. To the degree that you are not eating right for your metabolic type, you will start to develop inefficiencies at the cellular level, which over time will impact your glandular system, organs, and the whole body system, leading to chronic disease. It's no wonder then that since the rise of the modern Western diet, disease has become prevalent in society as everyone is eating the wrong foods for their metabolic type. You also have a lot of these foods being classified as non-foods, with the likes of processed foods, baked goods, snacks, etc., which have absolutely no nutritional value to offer whatsoever, and that actually require more energy from your system to digest it, detoxify it, and eliminate it, okay, than it offers you in return, meaning you are running a deficit. These take energy from you rather than give it. So I go into much more depth on my holistic course and PDF on my website to help anyone build a better relationship with their body and unlock their genetic potential. As you can see there at agmiddleditch.com, Sovereignty and Health. It's a good little course that I put together of all the best bits that I learned and that I applied and put into practice that certainly helped me, that I believe can help anyone when, getting to know thyself better and building a better relationship with these physical bodies in order to give them the best chance to then, go forward and be active and unlock that neocortex of us not having to worry about disease and not having an able body, and moving on to the more spiritual aspects of our development, right? Which is, tapping into our soul purpose, activating our DNA, coming aboard with joy, learning, etc. So my MRI scan, I went ahead to get my MRI done reluctantly. I was reluctant because I knew by this point I was on the map and had met with the consultant after my cardiogram and ECG, who had that huge left eye, right, and with the right eye, if you recollect, like the Dajjal, who insisted, like he was possessed, right, who insisted I should still get an MRI done. So I remember signing the consent form for the MRI and seeing the word die there, spelled, DYE. That's phonetically similar to die, and thinking afterward, what am I doing? I'm like a sitting duck in a machine. I have no idea of the consequences for my health, right? More so on an energetic and spiritual level, given the electromagnetism that these things like dish out to you. Since my encounter with the energy/healer shaman who introduced me to the concept of being abducted and potentially tagged with an implant or chip of some kind, I always thought I had something embedded in my right hip and groin area, as I would always have an enlarged lymph node there compared to the other side. And the connection in the connecting area with my right leg, foot, hamstring, and right lower back was always a problem for me, with constant niggles and minor injuries throughout my life, as I alluded to, with this feeling of my right side, having been affected somehow before coming down here. So I thought the MRI may aid in me scrambling any implants that may lie hidden in my body. So I used that as an excuse to draw out the positives of this treatment. Okay, so the procedure was planned to last around 45 minutes, with intervals of about 4 to 10 minute rounds, where each time they would come in and inject me with the dye, so it showed up on the scans. Everything went okay until the final injection, where a different doctor/nurse came in from the previous times to administer the dye, where he injected me, and I immediately felt a reaction as I was sliding back into the tube, where my chest had tightened and breath shortened, knowing this was not the same substance as previous cycles. I was very close to hitting the panic/emergency button you have in your hands in case you feel uncomfortable or have any other symptoms, but I controlled my breathing and everything regulated within 30 seconds or so, and I continued to finish the scan. I remember I left the hospital sensing that they have injected me with something. It wasn't right. It was definitely something else compared to the previous 3. And that night it was confirmed, because the theme for the next 5 to 6 months before I got this under control was basically every night I had skin crawling sensations come over me in random places that really messed with me and prevented me from getting good sleep for around 2 to 3 months. It felt like a hybrid parasite/nanotech organism that was injected into me that teamed up with my underlying fungal infection, okay, which all had an alien feel to it. It wasn't until I stumbled upon chlorine dioxide with Jim Humble's work, then later Dr. Andreas Kalka, as a treatment method, where over 2 or 3 months of ingesting this pretty much every day, I was able to get rid of these incessant skin crawling sensations that were occurring every night. Okay, it's worth mentioning too that in my efforts to find a formula to combat this, before stumbling upon chlorine dioxide, I took some fluconazole, where I immediately felt this organism shoot up my spine, where it lodged itself on my head with what feels like it nestled into my inner ears and surrounding blood-brain barrier, where it still kind of remains today, albeit somewhat under control, but still able to be triggered and used to try and mess with me, which is an ongoing battle, but something I've learned to live with and manage accordingly. Yeah, it was so bizarre. As soon as I took that fluconazole, like after maybe 30 seconds to a minute, something just shot up my spine, and it just felt like it was lodged there, because obviously I've been actively searching to try and get rid of it, and it wanted to survive, but it just had this inorganic feel to it. It was like a blend between organic and inorganic, like a hybridized fucking nanotech fungus parasite kind of entity that was in me, that was injected and kind of merged with the fungus I already had, right, of this systemic fungal infection that gave me that T-wave ECG, T-wave inversion ECG, and affected my heart. That it wasn't, it kind of, it took me 2 years to kind of get to that baseline level of having it under control, but it kind of kept morphing. Again, this concept of pleomorphism, as I was then adapting and changing my kind of tactics of being able to suppress it. There'd be times where it will get ahead, but then I'll catch up to it and suppress it, but then it will change and get ahead. Then again, I have to catch up and change my routine to suppress it. And it's been like this ever since 2021, pretty much the last 4 years. And it's only probably the last 6 months, right? I'm recording this in 2025. It's April 2025. That, no thanks, I think, to the activations with the grids of the earth that obviously my subtle body anatomy is in sync with, I'm actually able to gain access to those kind of higher dimensional currents and energies to help switch it off and start pushing it out of my body. That I've noticed, especially the last 6 months, there's been a lot of purging happening of this thing leaving my body, and the symptoms really being suppressed, and my kind of energy centers opening up again, and me physically feeling like I'm not fighting this thing constantly as much as I was before. So yeah, very grateful for that, but it certainly was a battle for 4 years. That was again kind of up and down throughout this whole process. So very fortunate that the kind of like the gateways opened up, right, for me to come back into being free of these kind of suppressive technologies and organisms that they put into me. So I talk about frequency attacks in this chapter as well. Throughout 2021, we had a few visitors. Yeah, this was so bizarre. We had a few visitors as one of the rooms that I was staying at, right, was put on Airbnb, where I had some interesting encounters, one of which was a man from London, all right, who came to visit for the weekend, who was otherwise down to visit his mother's grave since she passed, and was obviously carrying some grief. He worked in TV production and only caught him briefly as he left, but the 2 nights he stayed, he brought with him some very discordant energies that I've felt over those 2 nights as a horrible, demonic, fuzzy feeling all over my body, within my aura, about an inch above my skin, that prevented me from having a decent night's sleep. Clearing out his room, we could see he had drunk a lot of alcohol each night, and I remember sensing this ill energy source coming from his room, where both nights the TV would be left on with no sound as I observed the lights, from the TV go off and on in the room through the cracks in the door and from the outside window. Remember what I said about TVs and what can happen on a high dimensional level with like portal interface with these black mirrors? Could possibly be reason why, and people as conduits for entities too. He definitely was. He had like, just sensing into it, he had a lot of attachments, like a lot of evil astral shadow dancer attachments to him too. And obviously given where we were in the grids of the house, it was important for them to try and infiltrate it, get me off the grids to help protect the site that the tree was protecting underneath with this rare earth crystal gem cave that was helping to obviously anchor and run the crystic energies into the grids, which is why obviously I had that whole ordeal before in like March, April 2021, seeing Marduk / Satan Enki connected to the church and Freemasonic Lodge, if you recollect. So all ties in, and as a result, they still try to send infiltrants in and frequency weapons and stuff in order to try and get me off the grids, right? To try and wipe me out so they can take over, like on this chessboard Earth, that particular site that was kind of like defending, right? So strange. Okay, so whether he was harboring entities or using some device to hurl energy at me, I'm not too sure. I do not know. All I knew is could be all of the above, right? All I knew is he was a very strange fellow who looked white as a ghost and seemed to be curious about my work before leaving. It's one thing I've noticed with like the encryption of these individuals that are kind of coming in under this new age of technocratic, Ahrimanic, AI, artificial intelligence kind of agenda, like Elon Musk. He's just super pale. He's not hit, if you look at his body, it looks like he's kind of harboring some entities in his rib cage. It's like unnatural. If you see him with his top off, with just his shorts and stuff, and they've got this like this pale, technocratic, Ahrimanic look about them. And this individual certainly was, and he was, well into TV production with these black mirrors and all this AC/DC electrical kind of satanic energy currents as well. So just they seem to all have like a similar vibe, which is also portrayed in that American God TV series as well by Neil Gaiman. So it's all quite interesting when you observe the patterns there of these individuals, like the kind of parasitic, it's like similar to actually the entity I saw on Cannon Hill, who was manifested like Voldemort. Just this bold looking entity that was like very vampiric and very pale without, lacking the sun basically, because they're all kind of surrounded by the false light, from these devices, the LEDs, and, operating in the night under the earth and stuff like this. So we had another guest, which was more memorable, as I had experienced one of the strongest frequency attacks yet during his stay. This guy was supposedly an electrician who came for a few nights as he was supposedly working on a job nearby. The first night he stayed, I remember getting off to sleep okay, but then woke up during the night with the driest mouth, splitting headache, with the feeling like most of the moisture in my body was completely zapped, and my heart felt like it was pumping sawdust. I felt so groggy and proceeded downstairs to fetch some water, and again I saw lights on in the room, but this time it was the actual bedroom light that was on. I rehydrated and tried to get back to sleep, but I couldn't, as these frequencies were far too strong, which led me to pace around the house for hours. What I learned with frequencies is that it can actually scramble the water molecule akin to a microwave, which causes the water molecules to vibrate and evaporate during the heating process. This is why I felt so dehydrated. It wasn't until the early morning where we actually had a power cut in the house, which I could not reset nor find the cause of outside of the man's room. So I knew it had something to do with whatever it was he was using that was directed at me. However, with the power cut, I was still feeling discordant energies that was maybe due to the after effects from what I was exposed to, and proceeded to go for a walk around the block and find somewhere to sit by a tree that would maybe help shield me from these ill frequencies. As I walked past the house about 3 doors down, a woman in the upstairs bedroom immediately drew her curtains, looked at me, then drew them again. This house had people I never met, and later found out they were chronic alcoholics, which I also picked up on as being a source for some ill energies hurled at me at times, either through entities working through them or whatever they were disguised as humans, right? I also witnessed one night when sat by our Lebanese cedar tree, a strange purple strobe light beam into the sky a few times from the back garden, which was very strange. I remained outside the house for about an hour, just sat around the corner by a tree, waiting for when the man left who was staying there around 7:30 a.m. to go to work, as that was communicated to us from the Airbnb app. I remember seeing him in the van with a great big iPad looking device that was like on full brightness, illuminating his whole van and face, where he did not even notice me as I started walking back, as he looked mesmerized by the device. As I proceeded up the driveway, he started the van and left. I went in to flick the power board on again, and this time it worked. So I believe he probably had something plugged into the sockets that was used to try and mess with me during its stay, that resulted in the frequency attack I experienced. Yeah, it was a pretty gnarly one. I've had similar ones since later on in the timeline, but yeah, that was my first like proper, God, what is that? So discordant, like very powerful direct energy weapon being used against me, which is pretty mad. And again, it all follows the same theme with this encryption. Like think of the entities that I saw at the Notre Dame Cathedral fire, right, with this kind of like aromatic Luciferian light beings, right, with the Metatronic kind of encryption to it. It was all very the same. These guys carried the same kind of electronic artificial intelligence, sick energetic encryption to them, and that's kind of what you pick up, and what I picked up on as well, which they kind of have within their spectrum. They've got a multitude of different flavors, but it's all very demonic, it's all very antichristic and Metatronic that I picked up on over the years. So I don't have a memory of it being intense the following night, or whether it was the last night of his stay that this happened, but I can only recall that one night, which was the mother of all frequency attacks I was exposed to up until that point. I remember reading about Havana syndrome, which were accounts and testimonies of US diplomatic, intelligence and military officials stationed in overseas locations who experienced acute symptoms linked to sounds and frequency pitches that resulted in chronic symptoms of insomnia, headaches, balance, and cognitive problems that are more than likely attributed to ultrasound and microwave weapons. The official story and agencies neither confirm or deny this, but I know from first-hand experience these weapons do exist, and there are many of them, ranging from black hole ET grid technologies, to astral weapons and field manipulation, to on-Earth devices, both portable and fixed, as with the cell phone masts, 5G towers, and some planes and satellites. So it really is hard to completely prevent this from happening. The only real defense we have is living a healthy lifestyle, practicing meditation to amplify our natural energetic field / auras, visualizations, stay hydrated when subject to an attack, and keep a strong mindset. Some EMF shielding equipment with the likes of bed canopies, etc. may help too. You can even go as extreme as getting the whole house EMF proofed by professionals with screen and paint, circuit breakers, wires instead of wireless, etc. And doing the techniques like the Maharic shield and plasma body activations from the MCO AMCC teachings to build your body's natural defenses, that if you recall, Iyasha mentioned as the best advice for combating these ET Illuminati sleeper inspired technologies now on Earth. The latter I did not come across until late 2021, early 2022 in regards to the freedom teachings. I did actually utilize EMF bed canopies with grounding kits, but I found there are some frequencies that you just cannot block out, but overall are good for assisting in healing and a good night's sleep, when not under attack. So you've got a few images there just depicting this. That certainly individuals, like I said, when I first came into decoding the legal tricks and traps of the strawman deception, listened to Bibi Bacchus and Dean Henderson interview, and Dean Henderson saying that, they tried to knock me off the grids quite a few times. I've had multiple attempts in my life, and he's talking about frequency weapons. I was kind of like, what is he talking about? And then, I soon found out when I kind of followed in his footsteps of, being the change I wish to see on this planet, and start sending in my terms, conditions and papers, right, which kind of put me on the map, which I guess, they just wanted to get me off that site in the house of the grids. That certainly encountered those frequency attacks and attempts in my life too. But luckily I'm still here to live and tell the tale. So as I learned through reading Arthur Firstenberg's Invisible Rainbow, Dr. Joseph McCullough's EMF'd, and watching the online documentary titled Resonance, Beings and Frequency, I came to appreciate the importance of recognizing the effects of these invisible frequencies that have now penetrated and proliferated society, and to take measures to mitigate our exposure to these frequencies, especially when it comes to the bedroom, as these EMFs can disrupt your pineal gland, which is responsible for tuning into the natural circadian rhythm and releasing that all-important melatonin associated with healing and good sleep, something the documentary Resonance, Beings and Frequency highlights very well and provides proof of how these EMFs are otherwise one of the leading causes for cancers and other associated chronic illnesses such as fatigue and brain fog, especially for those who are electrosensitive, okay, which I would guess is most people on this journey who have cleansed their temple and become more conscious of the invisible worlds, forces and technologies that have laid hidden under the veil of ignorance. So just another interesting note, okay, you can buy these meters, right? I've actually got a few meters that I bought. Okay, one's for radio frequency range and one's extremely low frequency. Okay, I'll just grab them to show you. So I've got them here. So I've got one which is a 3-axis radio field strength meter, right? Which is, you could do some field experiments, and especially in your house, to measure kind of what your exposure is. And the EMF ELF extremely low frequency meter, okay, which is normally from cables and wiring within your house, okay, that might be in the walls with maybe where you're sitting or where you're lying in your bed, right, that you might want to pay attention to. And this is otherwise all the wireless radiation that you can pick up on, that you can get your hands on these devices for, you know, relatively cheap. I think I paid like $1,000 for both of these, which is about £500, okay, in order to get an accurate measurement and just have a play around with it and get to understand, you know, these invisible frequencies that are all around us, right? And just the notes I took from doing a bit of study from this, you got in the radio frequency range, right? Here in Australia, for the building regulation standards, they measure in milliwatts per square meter. Okay, so anything less than 10 milliwatts per square meter is basically what the standards are for your living space. Okay, and anything less than 5 milliwatts per square meter you should be exposed to within your sleeping space in your bedroom. Now, most people are like 100 times exposed to what the building regulation standards are saying is safe. Okay, so it's otherwise considered a carcinogen, being exposed to this EMF radiation. And there's been studies with the ELF range, okay, where childhood leukemia is linked to ELF of 4 to 5 milligauss, right? And then breast cancer 10 to 15 milligauss. I've got it on my notes on my whiteboard here. So it just goes to show that these can be quite pernicious. Okay, so again, just all these things, being mindful, plenty of solutions. It's just important to identify the problems. Like I said, if you folks are going through this, some of this could help explain why you're feeling some of these symptoms, okay, along with the parasites and fungus, right, the nanobots and the things that they're doing to us. Certainly the radiation's a big cause of a lot of people's kind of, you know, ill symptoms they might experience. So I write about chemtrails as well. I mentioned this, I think, in the previous presentation, but here I've actually got the results, so you can see that I sent away at the end of 2020. So the rise in technology certainly took a leap in the build-up of 2020, with governments around the world covertly replacing the incandescent street lamps to the LEDs, which run the ability to house the wireless 5G, 6G, etc. connection of the SMART, which stands for self-monitoring, analysis and reporting technology grid. As we've seen already, the onset of all this tech was coordinated by the Illuminati sleepers under the guidance of their principalities in heaven for their one world order agenda. The increase in chemtrail activity would have also been another order, wherein I actually sent a hair sample away to be analysed toward the end of 2020 to see what my body had been exposed to, which came back with very interesting results. As you can see there, it had barium levels off the chart, which is a highly toxic but conductive metal that would end up lodged in the blood-brain barrier if not detoxified, which would aid in assisting the conductivity of the human body and amenability to mind control technologies. I also have very high calcium levels, which coincided with Dr. Joseph McCullough's research in his EMF book that showed cell exposure to EMF can result in the disruption of the voltage gate calcium channel, which can leach more calcium into the blood and prevent the proper intake and administration of calcium in the body. A kind of double whammy, as the chemtrails also blocked out the sun, which is needed to produce vitamin D that helps in the proper utilization / absorption of calcium in the body. And also another thing that the main reason for them chemtrailing as well is because during this ascension cycle, the stellar wave infusions coming in, you've got to look at Earth's anatomy with its atmosphere. It's kind of like the 4D fifth dimensional level of its kind of chakra system, of its, subtle body anatomy. And what it's doing is acting to buffer and push out those energies that otherwise would come down into us as above so below, to activate that part of our template in order to allow us to kind of start ascending, start reintegrating higher parts of ourselves, and also which basically deflects the currents coming in from the sun that's distributing these stellar wave infusions, right? So it's a tactic, especially those for the indigos, to with the sun activate the DNA strands, so that portion of the junk DNA can start putting itself back together, so we're able to get activated and start running higher frequencies into the Earth's grids to assist it in this transition. So the notes I wrote on the form accompanying my hair sample under the main health issues and problems now read, I quote, "Over the last month I have been suffering with sleepless nights, ringing in the ears, heart murmurs, noticeably more frequent when laying down trying to sleep, which can also be a ascension symptom as well, and dry eyes and mouth throughout the night. Often find it hard to sleep. Once I do it, it's broken, making waking many times. This leads to fatigue during the day. Also note at times dry, creaky guts." Close quote. Under your thoughts and hunches and possible factors linked to your health issues, I wrote, open quote, "I thought it may be candida, so I did an MMS / chlorine dioxide protocol for a week to help flush it out. I did feel better temporarily for one day at night, but symptoms above has since come back. I also believe some of my symptoms may be EMF related, with experiencing weird ringing in the head / ears. Again, some of that could be ascension symptoms. That sometimes pulses and changes pitch and intensity, as if the body's antenna is picking up on some kind of external radiation," close quote. Of course, I did not mention the extent of what I was going through with the frequency and black magic attacks, but thought it be an interesting investigation that otherwise proved the very sobering fact of these devices and technologies being used against us and the kind of biological effects it has on our health. This is why I found living a healthy lifestyle and getting educated on such subjects was of paramount importance if I were to offer myself the best chance to handle large amounts of stress with what I had been going through. Many detox protocols exist, but chlorine dioxide, as advocated by Jim Humble and Dr. Andreas Kalka, I found offered a very fast and effective way of resetting the temple and aiding the body in getting rid of certain toxins and critters. There are lots of natural dietary detox methods out there as well, which are more expensive, but just as effective. I also found a hot bath with organic salts, bentonite clay, and sodium bicarbonate whilst doing visualizations and sound tone spells, affirmations out loud and in the head, help to flush and pull toxins out of the body, not only in the physical but on the etheric level too. EDTA is also a good supplement to take to help with metal detox and breaking down the biofilm fungus and bacteria that can form in your gut. Investing in EMF shielding and technologies, especially in your home and bedroom, will help immensely as well. You can also relocate to areas of less EMF pollution. Trees are the best EMF shields. And techniques to activate your light body and plasma body also helps big time as well. So as 2021 progressed, managing my hybrid fungus and parasite nanotech infiltration throughout the months since my MRI event, alongside diving deep into research with what my higher self was guiding me to, mainly with the SSP and super soldier material at the time, I was also still practicing a lot of semen retention. I started to notice that on every new moon for probably a good 6 months from my MRI event, I was being met by succubus entities in the astrals who had my astral body either drugged or in stasis, where as above, they would drain me of my fluid, right? I would then wake up to find as below my body had released semen whilst asleep. So strange. They were pretty nasty experiences, but I began documenting and noticing this pattern on every new moon this would occur, which is all linked into this harvesting of energy from entities. I thought that as a result of my compromised system, I was dragged into these experiences, which took me, another 5 to 6 months to develop the powers and get rid of the organisms somewhat in my body that were making me susceptible to, projecting into those spaces when asleep until the chlorine dioxide started to work and I developed enough strength to gain more control and try and avoid these situations from occurring. I had many dream experiences throughout this year that I will now write about, but one theme was underlying, apart from battling these succubus entities every new moon, was this sense of reclaiming other multidimensional aspects of myself that were captured or in compromising situations, right? And so otherwise go into more depth about these experiences in my book, which were pretty lucid, pretty weird, but there's a movie that you can see here, Everything Everywhere All at Once, that kind of taps into and shows you this multidimensional aspect that we have. If you understand the cosmogony of the MCOA MCC stack of creation of our multidimensional 15-dimensional 5-density holographic time matrix, one avatar being up in density 4, splitting itself 12 times to create 12 oversoul identities, and each one of those 12 creates 12 soul identities, and each one of those soul identities creates 12 incarnates, okay, implies that there is 1,727 other yous, you being the 1,728th, okay, being that is running around, that is all connected into the same one avatar consciousness identity, okay, given this law of physics within the stack of creation, when it's down in this kind of Russian doll concept, that you certainly have simultaneously going on throughout all of this holographic time matrix, and I think in parallel system as well, yourself, okay, it's going off and experiencing whatever it is you're experiencing, okay, and this movie kind of shows that concept and how she is able to tap into other versions of herself that have perfected certain skills that she was drawing from in order to get her through what she was experiencing in this life, with her being chased by all these guys trying to kill her, basically. So very, very interesting, revealing that. There's another good documentary or movie called Slumberland as well, that kind of, starts to reveal the nature of the dreaming world and the subconscious realms, and how powerful it is, and how other entities can transverse and travel amongst them. And there's also a documentary that a TV series that I just watched on Amazon Prime, I think it was, or Netflix, that again was based on Neil Gaiman's books, okay, which is called, I think, The Sandman, all right, which again is revealing the kind of nature of the dreaming world and the power behind that, what it's connected into with those, higher aspects of the intelligence of ourselves, with the sub and unconscious minds, okay. So I won't read here all of my different stories of what I experienced, but otherwise, I've had dream experiences of being in situations where I had to kind of save myself from weird, entities kind of keeping me penned in and siphoning my energy. I've had experiences of being able to walk through walls, being able to levitate, being able to fly, being able to use my mind to change the color of buildings, turn back time, heal people, and manifest things when thinking about it, which kind of tapping into our original form before we fell, right? Where I remember thinking of a gold ring, and I was showing someone, and it just manifested around my finger, and I did the same to that person. They held out their hands, and I did it. Went up to this house, touched the wall, had my color in mind that I wanted to change the color of, and the whole place changed color, right? And there was a car crash, being got injured. I turned back time, so the car went back before it crashed, so it was all put back together. And the individual who kind of hurt their shoulder due to the crash, I just put my hand on it and I ran energies through my palm in order to heal him. Had other times where I've been, taken and attacked, and I was distributing like high frequency through my palms of like pure sunlight radiation that was burning them, and they put me down and left me alone then, and I've had Harry Potter-esque type battles with wands. I've used my mind to literally cast spells and get out of situations. So yeah, when you unlock, your 4th and 5th DNA strands, and you start having memory recall of what goes on in the dream worlds and these other densities, right? Some of it, like you said, you can be taken down into phantom too. So you got like the underworld aspect, as well as the kind of compromised holographic dimensional system that we have in our compromised holographic time matrix too. That there's so much going on, it's pretty crazy. And as we go into next, you'll see what should be normal with our ability to dream, that otherwise has been taken away from us due to the history and the things that are being implemented as a result of kind of the evil expression of these races. And otherwise put here on the slide, which is kind of linked into what I talked about in one experience in my book. Before going to bed one night, I kind of came across this post, which kind of shows these portal sites, the sports. You can kind of break it down and speculate that it could be like serpent ports. That certainly there's a lot of energy, right? That's kind of manufactured in these events. That's probably harvested somehow, which some of these stadiums, not all of them, kind of are shaped in that kind of circle, oval, that kind of is similar to an eye. And I remember seeing this and reading what I, stated there, and I was thinking, wow, yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Anyway, it invoked a dream experience of me being in a location where all of a sudden this eye came over me and was like pressing me against the bed, which is kind of like this warden that was kind of keeping an eye on me and keeping me in stasis, that I consciously came back to and, dispelled. And I found myself stuck in a room where I had like bite marks, scratch marks, needle marks, and all these like weird wards on the wall, and like these witches were basically like, yeah, harvesting me and doing what they were doing to my energetic body wherever I was located, that I was kind of like consciously involved with trying to get myself out. That I kind of, me seeing that post was kind of like invoked that experience, which is quite interesting. But otherwise, thinking about the concept of energy and portals, a lot of them tend to have that shape, even with the vulva, the vagina of, beings being birthed into this realm, as well as the eye, which obviously takes in light, okay, which is a portal, has the same kind of concave geometries and the circular pupil within it, and some of these stadiums too, which no doubt is, put on some of these important ley lines in order to help direct energy of this extreme polarity into the grids, these serpent ports, as a lot of people refer to them as, which is quite interesting. So get into the dreamer mind. Okay, as we have already established, we all exist within the mind of God source, and there is an intelligent design to this mind, which has created vast amounts of space and arenas in which parts of itself, you and I, can go off and experience the infinite amount of realms and possibilities within this free will, multiversal, holographic time matrix, structured in external creation. And as we have touched on, which the MCO AMCC details, as a result of the unnatural mutations within our biology, light body, flame body, crystal body, Rasha body, spirit body, and plasma body levels, we have experienced this disconnect from not only our higher selves within the higher aspects of the 3D band, but also all the way up into density 2 and beyond, which goes into the sub and unconscious spaces and what they are actually linked to in a normal/natural holographic time matrix structure and levels of identity that are stationed there. These areas of ourself that have been divided are parts of us that house access to the abilities that are godlike, which people come to experience in higher dimensional dream experiences, and which people who have activated can experience and probably will start experiencing more of as we ascend with regards to the clair abilities, which is French for clear, as in clairvoyance, clairaudience, etc. Translated means clear vision, clear hearing, etc. So in this sense, dream symbolism does become an important subject to recognize and interpret as parts of your soul, oversoul, avatar, and rishi levels of identity, all the way up the stack of creation, back and into your collective gestalt identity, can and will communicate through these parts of self as best they can when you start consciously building a relationship and strengthening your connection. However, and what most people do not realize or want to pay attention to is that these parts of self are also the playgrounds for many dark entities who have the capacity and technologies to insert/plug you with false visions and memories. And because we have taken on the distortions of this system, which has a black hole interface with our shadow body structure, parts of our consciousness can slip and travel into these fallen black hole dream spaces, which can bring with them all kinds of distorted experiences that, if not carefully dispelled and or discharged or even acknowledged as a reality, can lead to much confusion when trying to interpret them when framed from the perspective of dreams being merely some aspect of yourself, which is true to a certain extent, but avoids the bigger picture of what is going on with tactics used to manipulate these parts of ourself. The same goes for channeling. You can open yourself up to being plugged right into one of the fallen collectives who love masquerading as your favorite saint, angel, or starfleet. Iyasha advises against channeling as it can be very dangerous. As David Wilcott writes in his Source Field Investigations book, open quote, Dr. LaBerge believes that every landscape, every object, every character, and every situation in the dream represents some aspect of yourself. A dream is a message from your subconscious mind and or astral self, and the language is symbolism. In a dream, you are presented with various problems from your waking life, but they often appear in disguise. If someone is abusing you in your waking life, they become a monster in your dream. As one example, everything in the dream is symbolic, and every symbol is some part of who you are, or some situation that is happening to you in your waking life. The basic aspects of this symbolic language are commonly understood among dream researchers. End quote. This language, as well as the mysteries of life, can be interpreted in a number of different ways, through many lenses and from many angles. The key to interpreting with the highest accuracy, so we can seek the truth from facts, is to take stock and look for patterns and synchronicities that outpicture in your waking state, whether that be through signs, symbols, new information, people, and or events. It is also important to acknowledge the technologies and distorted nature of, nature itself down here in the Milky Way galaxy, given the fallout, more in manipulations/distortions in our templates and technologies being used. This way we become better at differentiating the experiences we have from being either a subconscious internal processing of information that happens in our waking state, mixed with potential messages from those parts of our higher God self and internal projections that might aid us in this interpretation slash messaging system, to actual projections slash voyages into other dimensional realities along the dimensional scale, with interactions of other free will gifted beings of both dark and light, with actual spaces of reality where beings reside as part of the structure of creation. We can also develop discernment to be able to distinguish any false dreamscapes that may be designed and set up by fallen forces to help lead you astray on your journey, like with Arahabi, supposedly in the Three Christ story, right? The man they crucified who followed Jesus, and St. John the Divine with their supposed false visions of prophecy, which help perpetuate the agendas of the fallen Anu Elohim races. As David Wilcock continues to write, open quote, "Nothing is more frustrating than watching people share dreams in which the earth is being destroyed and then treat it as a prophecy of real events that are about to happen in the world, rather than a reflection of some massive change that is about to happen or has already been happening in their own lives," end quote. And I write, until you know evil, you know nothing. It's a shame to see such prominent figureheads in the New Age community emit very important information regarding fallen forces, dream manipulation, and holographic insert technologies in fallen dreamscapes, which can lead people to have these sorts of visions, which is actually designed to help butter up the mind of the masses, mainly the religious fanatics, to feed energy into manifesting these kind of timelines on behalf of their fallen principalities in heaven. If you recollect, the human race was created as a creator race where we actually have the ability to manifest through our thoughts and feelings. Okay, and so through us, as we went into, through black magic and the power of revelation of the method, predictive programming, soft disclosure, if we do not withdraw consent and just going along to get along, we actually help to manifest what they're otherwise seeding in our minds. And this can happen through visions and stuff and prophecies that obviously had inspired some of these Illuminati sleeper guys who think that they were holy and divine and chosen of God and XYZ to establish these fallen agendas. So you've got to be so careful. That's why the whole mantra in my book, until you know evil, you know nothing, because you're just a lemming that is otherwise unconsciously giving your manifestation abilities over to dark magicians and fallen races. Got to snap out of it. So I've seen many on social media platforms regurgitate the doomsday prophecies, knowing now full well they are running a subconscious script of fallen angelic dogma they are plugged right into. I know because I also became a victim to these prophecies for a time in the early stages when I was following a channel that was decoding the whole great sign in heaven, alignment, and the wormwood Nibiru Nostradamus prophecies. The goal, as I've already discussed when working out how black magic works, is to garner enough consent through the collective in order to lock in certain timelines of events. Thus, the doomsday quacks and scribes are those beings who, unfortunately, have been used as puppets to be fed visions and perpetuate the script, so more of humanity may be converted to help tip the quantum scales in their favour. It's a battle of wills when it comes to manifestation, knowing all is mine, and it is the will or volition that steers it. However, the fallen forces do not play fair and outright violate and harness people's free will without full disclosure and proper consent that would invalidate any contract and render it fraudulent. Hence why we've got, some divine will coming in and the guardians intercepting because they know it's not right the way they're going about things. This is very abusive. So here you got a few images taken from the Asha Ashiana at arheus.com, which is the stations of mind and memory, the plasmantic mercator fields of the human body and the embodied fascia layers with organic planetary interfaces, and the Tanaki algorithm Tanachi mutation phase 1 in the human body, your beastie and its banshee. Okay, so you can read through that. These are basically levels of your plasma body anatomy, which goes into internal eternal creation. Okay, that is running distortions. Okay, that otherwise has correspondences to those parts of our consciousness and matter body, okay, as we see in our manifest form down here. And on the right, you can see what otherwise it should be like without the mutations, okay? And so you can see kind of what we are otherwise healing from and going through the process of transmuting from the left to what you see on the right-hand side. Okay, and if you want more information on this, buy my book, or head over to arheus.com and buy some of our DVDs and lectures on the AMCC side of things. That goes into much more depth in explaining this and working with the techniques that can help activate this and clear what you otherwise see on the left. Okay, but you can see you've got the drama, you've got parts, all these different layers are connected to certain parts. Okay, so go down here on the one on the left, right, the Ashwi Asia unconscious. This is the unconscious part of the mind, okay, which also governs the cardiovascular memory matrix and inner fascia level. You've got the Ludfar subconscious mind, which is the liquid memory matrix middle fascia. Then you have the schema conscious mind, which is linked into the bone memory matrix outer fascia. Then you have the dreaming mind, and the muscle memory matrix and skin and tissue, okay, which otherwise corresponds to the skin and tissue in the physical body. Okay, so you have the Ariona, which is the eternal authentic mind, and a respiratory and digestive memory matrix. Okay, so you can see how it all connects, as above so below, as within so without. So I finished the chapter on the astral body and shadow body anatomy, manifestation, transduction sequence, and the net. Obviously getting into the subject of, my dream experiences and what's going on, given, you plug in our consciousness into the multidimensional cosmogeny, okay, of the MCO AMCC teachings, and then what is actually happening with when we're dreaming, okay, and what we're experiencing now and how it should be, okay, again, giving us that invaluable context. Okay, so the following diagrams are from the MCO AMCC teachings and are worthy of a careful study in regards to our subtle body anatomy and manifestation flows from pure consciousness to manifest experience within the hologram that will help us dissect some of these mysterious processes and how the mutations affect us. The left diagram, okay, is the diagram taken from the teachings of Kathara level 2 and 3 manual, where it states, open quote, the astral body is an electromagnetic replica imprint of the three-dimensional density 1 body that forms from the primal life force fields of the Eros, which is the D7 to D5 Eron field, the Ire D10 Marge field, and Mane D11 Trion field, and Manu D12 to 13 Rayon field, of the combined density 1 and density 2 radial bodies. The astral body vehicle activates when the dimensional lock seals, D-lock seals, between the density 1 D3 mental body open to the density 1 radial body and the density 2 dimensional lock seals between the density 2 D4 astral body and the density 2 radial body open to each other, allowing the density 1 D3 mental body consciousness to expand into the density 2 D4 frequency bands. The density 1 D3 consciousness expands to density 2 D4 through release of the dimensional lock 3 seal. From the D4 focus of consciousness, the density 1 D3 mental atmospheric plane, one full dimension below the stational consciousness, is perceived as the solid holographic field. The density 1 D3 consciousness continues expansion to the density 2 D5 frequency bands through release of dimensional lock 4 seal. From the D5 focus of consciousness, the D4 astral plane or density 2 atomic plane is perceived as the solid holographic field. The ability to astral project develops with progressive activation of strands 4 and 5 of the DNA template, through which the dimensional lock seals that keep the D3 mental body consciousness confined to one density and spacetime vector release, allowing the density 1 D3 mental body ego awareness to traverse other regions of spacetime and density. As the strand 4 DNA template naturally activates, the abilities of coherent dream recall, lucid dreaming, and simultaneous dreaming first emerge as the D3 mental body consciousness first expands into the density 1 radial body levels. As strand 4 activation continues and the D3 mental body moves into D4 frequency, the D3 mental plane comes into solid, more coherent view, followed by the D4 astral plane with strand 5 activation, end quote. So yeah, you can see, there is a scientific explanation behind dreaming and what is going on with, your light body and the processes of sleep, and, it's all, again, ties back to DNA activation and what you're able to gain access to consciously, given the state of your DNA morphogenetic fields, okay? So on the right, we have the transduction sequence in the miasmic body taken from Kathara level 1 manual, all right, showing basically the down-step sequence of consciousness and energy into manifest reality. You can see there are many levels and layers to our anatomy and creation before we get to the types of energy modern day science can measure with the likes of strong, weak nuclear force, electromagnetism, and the quarks, muons, mesons, subatomic and atomic particles and antiparticles. As a result of the mutations, damage and technologies used in our time matrix, there are miasms, and these seals that they've placed in our DNA strands. There are miasms which block these flow of manifestation abilities. By doing the shadow work and conscious healing of our templates, we can help improve these flows, which will aid in our manifestation abilities. Okay, so you can see where you got those kind of no entry signs. That's where the miasm blocks energy flow and creates a phantom shadow self, running on opposite mathematical programs, which blocks the natural energy flow. And if you just look at if you follow the step down here on the bottom, you got the primary life force currents that then goes into the planetary Merkaba field Partakai unit, then the Kathara grid, then the Partakai Particum, Okay, then the Maharic shield, divine blueprint. Then you've got the Kelon morphogenetic thought form field. Then it downsteps into the Merkaba fields. Then the Cathara grid DNA RNA template. Then the axiom lines. Then the Hova bodies, the auric field, the chakras. Then into the meridian lines. Then the Trine Marge field 5 radial body levels. Then the radius lines. Then the Mayan and Dion ionic particulates. Then the strong, weak nuclear force. Then the electromagnetism. Then the quarks, then the muons, the mesons, the subatomic and atomic particles and antiparticles, then the blueprint translation into nuclei, molecules, elements, compounds, chemicals. Then right down the end of the stack is the chemical DNA template and chemical lens of the manifest body form, and then the manifest hologram. Okay, so there's so much we do not know, and that science has not discovered yet. But yeah, no thanks to Iash Ashiana, we can kind of skip ahead quite a few centuries with conventional science and start playing around with, the technologies and techniques to help clear these miasms and activate and put ourselves back together, activate our DNA and put ourselves back together. Okay, so this happens at a planetary level, because, as above so below, we all carry the same kind of morphogenetic template of our anatomies, planets, stars, whole galaxies and solar systems and universes, as well as small biological life forms like us, all share the same kind of transduction sequence of our subtle body and physical body anatomies, where these blocks can be positioned. So we have here on the left diagram the shadow body anatomy in the net. Okay, diagram taken from the Dance for Life, Love and Freedom manual, August of 2008, which the net stands for Nibirian electrostatic transduction field. Okay, the small print reads, I'm going to read this out, the small print that you can see there. In 25,500 BC, fallen angelics of the Wysadek and Phantom black hole systems created the net, which is the Nibirian electrostatic transduction field, on Earth through installment of the NDC grid, Nibirian dialectic crystal grid. The net is part of a large anti-crystic crystal-based technology machine that was created in our time matrix 570 million years ago, with the intention of pulling our time matrix into the Wysadek black hole as energetic food. The net creates an artificial electrostatic field within the radial body of Earth and its life forms, through which a reversed matrix electrostatic replica of matter forms, called the shadow body, is formed in the phantom matrix black hole. Fallen angelics of the Wysadek black hole attached to the phantom shadow body replica of Earth humans, progressively draining life force and orchestrating subliminal control over humans to assist them in their agenda of taking over Earth's Templar to use as a tool by which our time matrix can be permanently drawn into Wysadek black hole. The net machine transmits artificial S13R blue sword current through Earth and its life field via a series of shield implants called the 4 black hearts of Metatron and the Metatronic seed atom. Activation of the 4 hearts and atom creates the fire sword initiation by which the Wysadeks intend to draw Earth and our time matrix permanently into the Wysadek black hole. The first heart activated in Earth's Templar in 22,326 BC. The Wysadeks activated the last 4th heart and seed atom on March 23, 2002, beginning Earth's planetary fire sword initiation. The Silver Sanctum and Amorea radial body activations can protect humans from the Metatronic 4 hearts and seed atom implants that are now activating within their personal embodied Templar. The shadow body can be healed through severing the Wysadek matrix net feeding cords of their shadow dancer attachments. Okay, so yeah, you can see the kind of mess as portrayed. We saw obviously a diagram of how things should be. Now this is unfortunately given what's happened with the cataclysm of the black hole being created 250 billion years ago in our time matrix and other full force systems now plugged into that. You can see that we're kind of, when we refer to doing the shadow work, I don't think many individuals know what's really going on and why it's so important to do it. In order to sever those cords to those entities, we're kind of literally draining life force from our system. These guys are parasites. So we have on the right diagram, again, I'm going to read through the small print. Okay, another diagram taken from the Dance for Life, Love and Freedom manual of August 2008, showing the shadow body anatomy, which attaches to the net, okay, grid and the shadow dances. So this small print reads, the sleepers, Earth, so this is the top left one, Earth humans blocked from higher dimensional spiritual self and natural divine blueprint since the 25,500 BC creation of the Wysadek net. Then we got the one next to it, so in the middle there, the shadows. Phantom black hole fell in our time matrix and Lyran-Elohim wars 250 billion years ago. Weesadek fell 150 billion years ago and interfaced with Phantom and us via the net in the Gaian-Orion wars 570 million years ago. The 25,500 BC Earth installment of the NDC grid plugged Earth into the Phantom Weesadek net, causing radial body distortion in DNA mutation in Earth life forms that create our polarized electrostatic shadow bodies in Phantom matrix. Weesadeks use our shadow bodies to feed life force from 11.5 dimensions of our living bodies, keeping us trapped in density 1. To heal ourselves, we must free our shadow from Weesadek shadow dances and reclaim our shadow energy. And the shadow dances are on the right, top right there, the diagram. The small print reads, Weesadek black hole races made the net machines to steal life force currents from our living system to sustain their universal Vecca that lost its ability to draw natural life force currents when it fell to black hole finite imploding universe status. Earth went online with the net in 25,400 BC Atlantis. The net artificially sustains life in Weesadek via artificially generated reverse D13 current called the Flaming Blue Sword, made from stolen D6R Phantom and D7R Weesadek current. This provides their universe with an artificial blueprint shield to create electrostatic hologram living dead bodies by absorbing the shield and life forces of living systems. Since 25,500 BC, Earth life forms have field attachments called Weesadek shadow dancers, who feed from and try to subliminally direct us via attachment to our bodies through our inorganic net shadow bodies. Blue Sword current links to planets and people via shield implants called the 4 black hearts that activate to suck the living body into Weesadek black hole for fragmentation and assimilation. Okay, so I've got a transcript taken from Iyash's Dance for Freedom Disc 1 lecture, talking about the two diagrams above. Okay, so open quote. What these implants do, and they've been partially activated progressively since 25,500 BC, partially, they haven't been fully activated. That's what they are trying to do right now. The final going in for the kill on the planetary level. What they do is they create an electrostatic field that's unnatural between the Eros and the rest of the radial body, and they reverse part of the radial body structure where it's supposed to be sound field on the inside, the light field on the outside. They reverse it, where you end up with the Marge field, the energy sucking up, contracting field on the outside, the light field on the inside. This allows them to use the field to suck energy from the system around it where it's supposed to transmit energy through it. It actually sucks energy from it. Now they've got it where planets do this, galaxies do this, and universes over here do this. This is a big beast. This Metatronic implant system known as the Beast is the big issue here, and has been going on for long before humans were created and this mess was started. What it does to us personally is it creates this same net, which is electrostatic field, a stasis field that stops the natural energy flow that would occur between the density levels. You get a partial energy flow, which is 1/3 natural, 2/3 reversed, which means 2/3 of our Merkabahs is reversed, 2/3 of our DNA template coding is reversed, which means the chemicals realign with each other in reverse, which create other chemicals that never were meant to be there in the first place. This is why our bodies die. They are not meant to. We were supposed to be in eternal life type form. What it also does, it creates what's called a shadow body. It's a portion of your shields that holds the imprint of your body but has 2/3 of your energy running in reverse. This is where we get the duality of consciousness all the time. I want to go here. No, you're going to go there. No, but I want to go here. This is good for me. No, that's good for you, etc. The angel and the devil and the shoulder concept. Okay, the shadow body is the template of what's called the shadow dancer, which is the Weesadek that was never part of your body in the first place, never part of your soul, never part of your incarnation, was never even part of your matrix, your universal matrix. They are from a whole other system. They have latched onto the beings in this system, and because human beings and indigos were created as the guardians of this system, they have the highest codes there. So they latch onto the beings that have the highest codes that they can get their hands on, because it gives them access to most of the things in this universe. So we have a big problem. It's called the shadow dancer problem. First, we have to understand that we have this net static field that has been blocking our high consciousness literally biochemically. It's literally between what should be our Eros field and the next level out of our radial body. And what it creates is chemical distortion in the DNA, okay, where the DNA isn't programming right. It isn't manifesting correctly. That chemically blocks our ability to have the rest of our consciousness naturally flowing here. So what we are doing when we heal this is we are restoring ourselves biochemically as well as restoring ourselves bioenergetically. It means we need to heal this part of ourselves, shadow body, and it has 2/3 of our energy. And right now we're running on 1/3. We can't just cut it off and throw it away, because we are throwing away 2/3 of our energy, which means we are not going to have enough thrust to move out of density 1 and integrate density 2, which means you'll be stuck in density 1 incarnational cycles, which is not a pleasant condition to be under present conditions we are under right now. So the shadow needs to be healed. The shadow is interesting because what it does when you go to sleep in the dream state, what occurs is where your natural astral body, where you should have activated and seals open and go out and run around in the astral body, it creates the implants that create the shadow, creates a fragmentation where part goes into, you get an astral imprint that's reversed, so it's like an astral shadow, and then you get a part stuck in the D3 mental body framework. This is where you get those fragmented dreams from, where a dream, weird kind of stuff, and I was processing, I guess, stuff from the day or whatever, you get little fragments of incarnational things floating by, and you can't figure out what the heck they are. This is why you get lost when you go to sleep. Going to sleep used to be you would shift consciousness to another space, fully know what you did, and fully bring it back with memory when you shifted back into the body. It was all conscious. This is what creates sleep. This is what creates REM, rapid eye movement sleep. That is not a natural level of consciousness. That is something that biochemically occurs because we get split in half when we're supposed to go astral. Our astral body doesn't get to go astral. It doesn't go into density 2. It gets pulled through the void and down into the path of Arimathea, coding into the phantom matrix. Now, it's on its way into the Weesadek matrix. Some of them actually get pulled all the way into Weesadek and get sent back. But most get sent into phantom and pick up more reverse coding from the phantom atmosphere. Come back in, merge again with the part that got stuck over in the mental body, bring it back, come back in. Your consciousness comes back into body and says, where am I? As you wake up disorientated. And if you had astral experience, very often you're phantom, very often they are phantom. Okay, what you're experiencing is actually a tour in phantom rather than a tour in the astral plane. But if you don't know the differences between the places, it's all the same to you. You know what I mean? A lot of the astral body courses that are out there right now are consciously teaching you how to get into phantom because they don't know the difference between a natural astral projection is and what a real astral body is and what the phantom shadow body is. Now, when we heal the shadow, these two come back together, mental body fragment and shadow body. These things open up naturally, density lock seals, and from the natural connections between the densities through which we can have natural astral experience, which eventually leads to biolocation, which eventually leads to biological ascension and the ability to move between space-time frames. So we're going to heal this. What this is connected to, pointed to the shadow body. See these chords here? This is a rough drawing of a chord. Now here we have the implants. She's pointing to the black heart symbols. They're called the 4 black hearts and Metatron implants. They manifest in the body in these ways, but they manifest up each density. There is one in each density. If you look at the embodied Kathara grid, that corresponds to the density 1 body, density 2 body, density 3 body, and density 4 body. This affects your soul, your oversoul, and your avatar self, not just yourself down here. That's why all of these parts of you are helping you to heal this, because the whole self needs to heal this problem. The 4 of them manifest in the body on each level, on each of the 4 levels of the body, and they direct the flow of energy. They split in half the consciousness when it goes astral, and they allow through the part that goes phantom, which is the phantom shadow body. They allow the Weesadeks in their matrix to use the Arimathea wormhole to directly connect into the phantom body or your shadow body and draw energy directly from you on each level. This is what also allows them to push their consciousness through that same tube, come into, possess your shadow, and what they are trying to do now is to take over the bodies. That's how they do full body possession, where they literally, as conscious energy, push themselves as light sound patterns through the tubes, through the shadow body and into you. And since the shadow body is holding 2/3 of the energy right now because of the implants, and we're holding in the natural state, in the Christos imprint, only 1/3, that makes it a pretty formidable adversary. That's why possession happens now. It's kind of funny what they conveniently taught us. They helped to cultivate science here. They helped to teach us that possession was just old wives' tales stuff. Nothing like that really happens, just like they taught us that consciousness was a byproduct of chemical firing in the brain, and it will be gone after the brain is gone. All the science teachings has been catered to get us to the point where we wouldn't be able to understand, or if somebody showed us these diagrams, we'd laugh at it and we would say it's fiction, so we wouldn't fix it, because the fixing isn't that hard. The fixing is activating the flame bodies. That's why these teachings were banned since 25,500 BC. There have been people burned at the stake, people with heads cut off. I mean, literally all sorts of stuff for teaching this stuff. We were the heretics or the fallen gods. That's what the Azarites have been for a very long time, because we taught the truth. And no matter what you tried to do to us or threaten us with, and no matter what you took away now, we always trusted the truth and balanced the universe, and we would not compromise. We would speak our truth. End quote. Okay, so that's a really good explanation as to what's going on there from Iasha. And I continue, I write, so we can see there is much more to this dream experience than modern science can explain. And even though some fringe scientists are beginning to discover such concepts as the source field, remote viewing and free energy, etc., science is still locked out of recognizing a lot of this as reality, as they have yet to possess the tools, instruments and knowledge to detect it, let alone the conscious activations of their DNA template to allow for the first-hand experiences of OBEs and lucid dream travel, which reveals the non-local nature of our consciousness, as Russell Targ found out, but also the real nature of the technologies and manipulations we have been subject to. Moreover, we have the intruder races and Illuminati sleeper races who are controlling and suppressing this knowledge and technology as well, but we do have the process of the failsafe in full swing, which is bringing the curtains down on this drama over the next 900 years or so. And we do have plenty of solutions now starting to surface that we can align ourselves with, embody and practice. So we may consciously participate in this transition and assist our own as well as each other's ascension. So equipped with this knowledge, we are more than able to start interpreting our dream experiences with more precision, especially as we build a stronger relationship to our higher selves, / our intuition. So we may be able to discern where we are and what's really going on. So yeah, I'll finish off the chapter talking more about some dream experiences that I had that, I won't go into too much detail that otherwise you can read in my book. But one particular salient experience that I had was me being in front of a mirror lucidly in one of my old houses in England, and I saw myself, and I was like, had this long sweeping blonde hair down to my traps, right, on top of my shoulders, and I had these big black almond eyes. Okay, and then I leaned forward and I could see everything was perfectly symmetrical, looked like very angelic, similar to kind of the image on the right, but no facial hair, and very handsome. And I kind of smiled and I had like perfect teeth. Everything was just so symmetrical. And I think beauty, is symmetry in a lot of ways. And otherwise, when I peered into my eyes, I can see that within each eye was just like all of the stars and galaxies and stuff that you would otherwise can see in space with a lot of, images. So in each eye, I kind of held like parts of the cosmos with like all these different galaxies in, which is absolutely incredible. And I remember being there, like just kind of move my head and kind of touch my hair and thinking, oh my God, yeah, because normally I've got short hair in this life. And it was a shock to me to kind of like have long hair and see myself like that I kind of, was there for about 30 seconds before I then woke up with the memory of that experience, which is quite, salient for me and maybe, giving me a hint as to my form before coming here. One of my higher forms, across the stack of the creation, whether it's the data planes, I've got no idea, density 4, density 3, no real reference or message from that, but otherwise just seeing this very high angelic form with the black eyes, but peppered with all these stars and galaxies, with long hair. That was like gorgeous, and I was so amazed and fortunate to have that experience, that I knew it was kind of some high representation of myself that I was connecting into, that I could see when stood in front of the mirror, so that was kind of like those two images there. If you kind of merge them, I tried to run a model to kind of replicate what I saw, but it's very difficult. But it's otherwise kind of like similar black eyes, but maybe a little bit bigger, but just peppered with like stars and galaxies and stuff on like an angelic humanoid kind of face on the right, with the long sweeping blonde hair up to my shoulders, which is quite incredible. And then the image on the bottom is otherwise taken out of the Matrix 4 movie, where I had a dream experience where all these like weird portals were opening up, and I got basically, it kind of felt like I actually got invaded and snatched in my dream state. Then all of a sudden I was kind of taken by this cartel, and they positioned me down in the backyard of this house where they all stayed. And there was some kind of like weird black magic spell that was on me, right? And he kind of sat next to me, and there was like a whole audience of them kind of like just chilling out, looking at me. And this guy sat next to me was kind of mocking me and saying like, oh, go on, give us a speech. Are you going to make a speech? I went to speak and I couldn't. And it otherwise like manifested a piece of paper. And I was kind of like, oh, what's that? And it kind of opened up and it said, in order to protect yourself from black magic, cover your ears. And I was thinking, well, that's weird. And then they were kind of like laughing as this happened, because I was under some kind of like, I don't know, hold. They kind of grabbed hold of me, right? So I remember dreaming, and then all of a sudden I was like in a helicopter. They kind of caught me and then landed in the back of this garden, and they're like, yeah, make a speech. So he said it the second time, and I went to go speak, and I couldn't. And another piece of paper came out, and I remember grabbing the piece of paper, and I didn't open it this time, and they're all laughing. And then he kind of prodded me again, but I knew this time that the spell had lifted. And so I said, yeah, I'm going to make a speech. How about I talk about Jesus Christ? And so this was the second time where I used the name Jesus Christ. And as soon as I said that, right, it was like a bomb going off in the reality field that I was in. That kind of shook like an earthquake and tremored the reality field, and they just scattered. And it just sent them scattering like a pool cue to a load of balls on a pool table. And I got up and I remember looking at the piece of paper, the second piece of paper, and it had like a little map that showed me where to go, and it had Angel Street. And so as I was following this paper, I kind of went out from the backyard, out the exit onto the road, turned left, and headed towards what was a stadium. And all these beings like kind of like just malfunctioning. It was so bizarre because I said Jesus Christ, and the whole place was like shaking for maybe 10 seconds before it kind of settled again. But these guys were still like malfunctioning and scattering. So I followed the map and I walked down the ends, and I could see there was something going on in the stadium. So I remember entering into the stadium, and where these kind of like shutter doors were, they were opening up, and then all of a sudden this kind of like portal opened, and there was all these humans pouring out these portals that had black eyes, exactly the same as what you see on the bottom picture there, taken out of Matrix 4, but without the green. And they kept coming out, right? And I called this, I think, the demon, black-eyed demon hordes coming out in human form, and they're all kind of like marching out onto the road and down to a destination that I couldn't see. But as they were kind of doing this, they're all kind of flooding through, like kind of 4 or 5 persons thick, like just a channel of all these individuals coming out of these portals. I kind of got in the way, and I realized how much up they picked me up, and they were saying like, oh, chuck him in one of the rooms, like as a prisoner. And that's when I said, no, get your hands off me. And I managed to channel like sunlight basically through my palms, and with the extreme heat and radiation was burning them, and they dropped me and just left me. And so then I just kind of stood there observing this going on, that there was some kind of like army being summoned in that realm with all these black-eyed possessed humans marching towards a destination somewhere in the distance. And then I kind of woke up, right? So yeah, but very bizarre. But yeah, I had many weird lucid dream encounters that I kind of elaborate more on in that chapter, that I won't bore you guys on this presentation. So yeah, that wraps up this chapter. Otherwise, again, very educational for me in understanding what's really happening with the dreaming experience, what's otherwise going on with the knowledge of evil, okay, and what we're susceptible to, and why it's important to do the shadow work, and again become aware of these things so you can discern based on what you're experiencing in the dream worlds. Are they really coming from your higher self, or are they coming from those parts of your conscious mind that's fragmented, processing previous day activities, or trips into phantom or even Weesadek? Okay, so this is why it's so important to be discerning, get the knowledge so you're able to be discerning when ascertaining, coming to conclusions based on some of the experiences you're having, but as well as doing the techniques in order to protect yourself and kind of cut those cords and reintegrate that part of yourself that have been programmed and taken on the distortions, which is our shadow body. Okay, so thanks for listening, folks. I'll see you over in the next one in chapter 16, where I'm going to be going over my Amanita muscaria mushroom experience, unpacking Christmas, okay, Jesus Christ and the 12 days of Christmas, which all goes into this 3 Christ story, Joshua 12. The freedom teachings, obviously when I came into it, more of what happened in 2023, and then the Scarab Beetle Nephilim infiltration by Crowley Jr., and my 33rd birthday, where Horus and Hathor symbolism was coming through, and another out-of-body experience with the Zoidcast, which was very bizarre. All right, folks, thanks for listening. Thanks for watching. Stay safe as always, stay sovereign, and I'll see you over in the next one. Ciao for now.